Let's talk about the AOV system found within Arnold. This is a really powerful system which will help you break down your renders into separate passes. Currently, we have everything merged into one. So if you, for instance, want to later on, you want to change the reflection color, the subsurface amount, maybe how strong the direct lighting is, it's very hard to actually do that. But if we are using AOVs, we can now break it down into their separate components. So for instance, if we want to just change the color of only the subsurface, we can easily do that. We find the AOVs under render settings and AOVs to the right. This is just another name for render passes, which you might be familiar with in other software. We are going to be adding a few different ones. To the left, you can see the available AOVs, and to the right, you can find the active ones. So in order to add them, we select the ones we want, and then we just click the arrow, and that will add them to the active AOVs. So if we now were to just, for instance, set the N one, which is the normal, then we hit play, and now we can see under the render view, all the way to the left, we have beauty and we have N, and this just shows you the normal pass of the scene. If we want to remove an AOV, we can click the arrow to the left. Now we go back to beauty. Just pause the render. The ones I prefer to use would be N. This is really useful. Now you can actually see the model with the way the model is without any shading. Then we scroll down a little, and I prefer to have diffuse, indirect, direct, indirect. Scroll down a little bit. Specularity, SSS, transmission. You don't have to have these if you don't actually have this in your scene. Currently, we do have SSS with this character, and we have transmission with this character. So if you don't have any of that, there is no reason to have them whatsoever. And we can also see we have a bunch of more, which we really aren't going to be using. Like I said, Arnold is incredibly deep if you wanted to, but it can also be quite easy to use if you know what you want and you're not going that crazy. So once we select them, again, just hit Control key and select them, we can click on the arrow to the right. And now if we hit play, now we can see the different AOVs. We can just hold down or hit the down and up arrow to go between them. Now we can see the different ones. N, which just shows the normal. Diffuse, which shows all the diffuse information in the scene. Direct, which is the direct lighting. Indirect, which is the indirect lighting. The direct lighting will come from the actual direct lights. This is where the light hits directly, and the indirect lighting is where it will bounce around. Specularity, which is the reflection. Then we have SSS, which is the subsurface. So you can see we have SSS on this character, which is to make him more waxy. Then transmission. And that was the last one. So transmission just being the transparency. So what is this actually used for? Well, a few different things. Even if you aren't going to be doing multipass compositing in something like Nuke or Fusion, this is still really useful. We'll get into it a bit later when it comes to the render settings. But when it comes to the render settings, in short, we control the amount of noise by changing the noise amount per attribute. So if we want to reduce the specular noise, we can reduce it right here. But in order to actually see what the specular noise we have, we can go into the specularity, and now you can see we have specular noise, which means we should probably increase this amount. We can also use them if we want to export them out to use in compositing where we can overlay them and basically recreate this final image. By using AOVs, we can now create the exact image, but now we have far more control over it. Like I said before, if you want to change the color of the subsurface, well, we now have the subsurface. So if you were to add these together, you can easily change the intensity, the color, whatever you might want to do with this. So it just gives you a lot more power. So experiment a bit with this, and what AOV you require is really dependent on your scene. Like I said before, if you don't have SSS, you don't have to use the SSS amount. It also, of course, depends on your pipeline as well, how you prefer to comp this together in Nuke later on. We can also make a custom AOV. For instance, let's say we want to have a pass which is ambient occlusion. Well, we don't have that, so we have to make our own. This is very easy to do. If we go under AOVs and add custom, now you can see we can add a custom AOV. So now we call this AO for ambient occlusion, and this creates a new empty container. So we can go under AOV or AO now, under the AOV list, and there is nothing here. But what we can do, we can go under the actual AOV node. Now you see we have an AI AOV AO, which just says it's an Arnold AOV, and we called it AO, and you select it just by clicking on the different AOVs. So now that we are under a custom AO, we can go under custom AOV and shader. This is where we can add custom shaders. So we click the input, go to Arnold, we can now search for ambient occlusion. And there we go. And you can now see that this entire scene is now populated with the ambient occlusion shader. Now you can start to change the, the fall off, whatever you want to do. You can tweak this to your heart's desire. If you want another one called curvature, you can do that as well. Create. Now we have an empty curvature container. And in the shader, we can do exactly the same thing. Select Arnold, type curvature. And now we have exactly the same thing as we had with AO, just that now we have all the curvature. This can be really handy if you need to do some specific kind of post-processing on your images based on the curvature. It can also just be handy just to see your model in a different way where you can really see all the curvature. So we'll be using AOVs a bit more when it comes to the render settings chapter. But for now, to sum it up, we find the AOV system under AOVs, the AOV browser. We click on the AOV we want. We hit the arrow, which puts it under the active AOV list. If you want the attributes for the current AOV, you can find that by clicking on it. And this opens up the node for the AOV. And we also have them down here as well. And we also have a list of the current AOVs which are active down below. And we have them right in the Arnold render view to quickly go through them.